This week on Filthy Hope.
If I need to do rapid fire prayer and I can't get the language out quick enough, I will launch into prayer in tongues, because it's like this. I describe it as like a golden conduit thread between my heart and soul and heaven. And I feel that there can be no electrical input from anywhere else when I pray in that way. See, I know that sounds like I'm a super spiro weirdo, but that's just how it feels for me.
This podcast is a Uniting Heart and Soul production and was recorded on land that was stolen nearly 250 years ago. On this particular episode, we recorded on the land occupied by the Gadigal clan of the Eora Nation. We pay our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and we acknowledge that sovereignty over these lands was never ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. At Filthy Hope, we humbly contribute to the ancient and ongoing traditions of storytelling when we share stories on this podcast. Hello and welcome back to Filthy Hope, the podcast that talks about Jesus, life and culture and where those three wonderful things collide. This week, I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Rev Ness.
Hey, Pastor Jonty.
And I'm Pastor Jonty. There you go. Thanks, Ness. I've had a few people, you included, start referring to me as Pastor Jonty. I'm still getting used to it.
Totally.
I will refuse to refer to myself as Pastor Jonty.
Well,
but
suck it up.
Yeah.
It's a new vibe, babe.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm okay.
It's
3 sleeps to go.
Yeah, it's getting close.
You better watch out. You better not pout. You better not shout. I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. Woo, 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 woo.
See, I don't know if this is different to well, it is different to most years. Weirdly enough, I've found myself not encountering a lot of like that
ho ho ho
stuff in just like whether it's I just haven't been going to the shops as much, or I just haven't engaged with that annoying commercially Christmassy stuff.
That's good. I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, it's been great.
Yeah, I'm a bit sick of wearing red though. I feel like it's time for a fresh colour, you know. But I just love the whole Christmas thing. As I've talked about before, the house looks like a bad David Jones, and I've got Santa's everywhere, and it's a full vibe going on. I do love it though. But in church we've been, you know, the lead up is what we call Advent, and we've been looking at hope and peace and joy, and on Monday it's going to be love. So those 4 weeks of preparation, and the question I've been asking my congregation is, are you ready? Are you ready? Psst, psst, are you ready? He's coming. You know, and not just the baby's going to be born, but are you ready? He's coming again. So nice. I've been doing a focus on that on my Sunday services anyway. It's been really interesting. Good stories, good narrative, isn't there? In the lead up to the Christmas narrative, I enjoy it liturgically.
Yeah, it's always an interesting. Like it's almost like a ritual of every year.
Very
you
much.
pace through the story again.
Yeah, you do.
And each year it kind of reveals new and different stuff.
It certainly does. Yeah, the story stays as rich as I remember when I was first learning to preach. I get excited because I know the story really well. But trying to find something fresh and new, and how's God speaking to me this year in regards to the story. And I think what's interesting, you know, about hope, and that's what we do in the first week of Advent, is talking about the hope of are you ready, of Jesus coming, and the hope of this of the Messiah. And I think with the interview that we're going to show later in the episode today, it is just all full of hope. It was a great interview that you did with Meredith Percy, and I'm really excited to unpack that.
Samaritan's Purse.
Yeah. Shout out to Samaritan's Purse. And you know, Jonty, they do so much more, don't they, than just the shoebox.
That's right. Yeah, I have so many memories of as a young kid. My family would always, you'd get the shoeboxes in and you'd pack it and then send it off, and I'd always I wonder who it is that's going to receive the box. Yeah. And I think when months ago when we were sort of looking ahead at the Christmas season for the podcast, and I think it was you initially raised Samaritan's Purse. I kind of went, the Christmas box people.
Right.
They're so much bigger than just that. Like
Aren't
they do
they?
so many things, which we'll hear about later on when we jump over that interview. I was blown away. And I guess for listeners that maybe aren't familiar with Samaritan's Purse, that's something to look forward to or maybe skip ahead to. There'll be timestamps down below for that, just about all the incredible work that they do around the world.
Holy moly, I had no idea, Jonty.
Yeah.
And that day I had Greg from Samaritan's Purse turn up to church to give me a beautiful banner and a teardrop banner and some paraphernalia, because we were one of the drop-off locations at Uniting Heart and Soul at Wallara for other churches to drop their Samaritan's boxes. So in our hallway there we had huge freight boxes arriving that were going to be shipped off all through the Pacific. I think Meredith actually refers to this year they're being sent off to Ukraine, which is, fantastic for obvious reasons. Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Solomon Islands and Cambodia this year, but they go to different places in need. And, the hope piece is that we're not just packing toothbrushes and hairbrushes and a fun little toy and some little jammies for little kids in need. While that's all critical stuff, Samaritan's Purse actually used this as a conduit to a bigger conversation. Yeah. Because the thing I didn't know, Jonty, is that Samaritan's Purse then run these discipleship 12-week programs for the kids that receive the boxes, and millions of children during this Christmas campaign actually come to know Christ. If that's not hope, brother, I don't know what is, Santa aside and Westfield Shopping Centre, that just makes me really happy and hopeful about our kingdom here on earth, that we're actually doing something with such great depth and meaning. Plus it brings, and the other word in Advent is joy. I just know when I take my adult girls shopping, we do a shop to Target and we go and fill the boxes, and we have so much fun filling the boxes with precious things for these little kids, wondering who's going to open that on Christmas, and we get to pick the age bracket. So next year, if you haven't had a chance to engage with Samaritan's Purse, you can certainly reach out to us at Uniting Heart and Soul, but go directly to them. They'd send you off as many boxes as you need to pack, hey?
100%, yeah. And like you say, similar to you and the girls, I have so many memories attached to like that in the lead up. And it's a little bit earlier than we kind of think of Christmas, but like to me it was always this signifier, it's almost that time of year. It's time to start buying the stuff for the Christmas boxes.
Because it comes out around October.
That's right,
Yeah, exactly. And I think I've had so many friends that aren't into Jesus and don't go to church and think what I do is really dumb, but they like that I do ministry, but they don't really engage or hook into it. They just...
The Jesus thing.
The Jesus piece. But they asked me for boxes because they want to do the box thing. They want to actually bring joy to somebody else, thinking outside their own nuclear family and their own needs, thinking for others. And it's a beautiful thing, You don't have to be a happy clapper to want to,
No, it's an example
love
of
one another.
Yeah, and here we go, Pastor Jonty. The James passage about faith without deeds is dead. You know, like to me, it's a really great example, and that as an example of just how real this is to people who don't get the whole institutional religion Jesus thing
And the church thing.
But helping other people. Like it's just unambiguously helping bring the kingdom closer to earth. And
It's just love on steroids, isn't it?
Yeah, people, and even people who may not understand the whole Jesus thing, understand that helping people in need is a good thing.
Yeah, that's right. There's plenty of really great people out there in the world that lend a hand. And in the interview that you do, Meredith Percy refers to at Christmas time, if you find yourself at a loss and you've got nothing to do, reach out to us at Samaritan's Purse because we need people.
Yeah.
They do this whole disaster recovery piece, which I actually didn't know about, Jonty. It was just extraordinary.
And then she, try not to, we're basically
giving away
on the edge of just telling the interview for it. We'll jump to it soon. But one of the things she was talking about, which really resonated with me, is the fact that not just within Samaritan's Purse, they certainly hope to model this, but that there are individual roles and tasks and opportunities and missions that will fit each individual's unique set of skills. Not just set of skills, but desires and
to serve.
Yeah, ways that we all bring ourselves into the service of the kingdom.
Right.
I think sometimes it can certainly for me, I look at whatever the situation is, whether it's conflict in the Middle East or climate catastrophe or smaller, like more micro things in my local communities, and you kind of go, I don't know if I am the right person to, whether it's be on the front lines doing the thing or the jobs and the tasks and the ways of being involved that are more public. You kind of look at them and can fall into the trap of thinking that that's the only way that you can help.
Right.
That is not true, and something that Meredith speaks about and something that is true just in a more broad sense is whatever gift you have and whatever calling you have, there is a corresponding opportunity to serve.
100%.
Whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And when you said to her, how can we help? I thought that was super interesting because I thought the way that we would help would be through money. Just throw money at this, because these were the people that were at the front line in COVID. Yep. Remember those images that we saw on the TV in New York and all the white tents set up in the park? Yep. When people were dying and refrigerators were filling up with people, dead bodies, Samaritan's Purse were in there. And I feel ignorant, Jonty, because I only thought they did Christmas boxes.
Well, that's right. And that's part of my, having spoken to Meredith and read a lot more about what they do, I was blown away by just the scope of what they're doing in so many different areas.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. So we're going to jump to that interview later on in the episode. But first, I wanted to ask you, like in this Advent season, going through the Advent liturgy, has anything jumped out to you this year in going through that? We spoke earlier about every year we revisit it and hopefully it reveals new things to us. What's it been like for you re-experiencing Advent this year?
I think the apocalyptic nature of the readings in that first week, talking about what it's going to look like when Jesus comes again. I find that all a bit scary. I previously found that all a bit scary, clouds and thunder, and it's just an apocalyptic imagery. And I get nervous by that stuff just by the nature of who I am. But for some reason this year, I had a bit of an aha moment and thought to myself, and I think we're experiencing some rough weather at the moment. It's been really hot and then pissing down with rain and been some big thunderstorms. And the other night...
I have a thunderstorm story to tell you later, but keep going.
Big thunderstorm. It was clapping like crazy and lightning and I actually like thunder and lightning on if I feel safe and I'm tucked in at home, right? And I thought, why is that any different to the apocalyptic imagery that's written about Jesus' second coming to earth? It's not really. I need not be frightened because it's going to be a great thing. So I think I don't know, it's I feel quite silly saying this, but you did ask. I feel like I just had a bit of a aha, it's all going to be okay moment. Jesus is coming again and I hope I'm alive to see it, but I suppose many generations have thought that. I bet my grandmother actually thought that as well, and generations before that. And I think it's all going to be wonderful and we need not worry. We know it's going to happen. It's been foretold. It's going to happen. In the same way that Jesus' birth was foretold. Right. For generations. Absolutely. The first arrival of Christ. Right. Yeah. So why would we doubt it for a start? Not that I doubted it, but I was scared of reading about it in this scary kind of the way that they describe it. So I think I had a moment when I was prepping that for the very first week of Advent, which was about hope. And I went, I need not be so stressed about that. It's actually going to be all right. It's going to be beautiful. I love a good violent thunderstorm. It's actually good. Good stuff happens. Pisses down with rain. The weather starts to feel and smell beautiful. There's a beautiful smell in the air. Wet, fresh rain on the concrete. Isn't it? Yeah, do you love that? Yeah. I love that. And it's okay and it's fresh and beautiful and it washes away the old and in comes a fresh start, and then the sun breaks through. So I had a beautiful, hopeful thought about that.
That's a great image in terms of what I really want to do an episode in the new year about apocalypse and what that actually means.
Oh, can you do that with someone else?
But so like apocalypse, not in the like end of the world like sense, but like the apocalyptic literature in scripture and what this phrase, what this term apocalypse actually means theologically and in scripture and this idea of revelation, and with the storm comes the breaking of new blue skies.
Yeah. Dawning of a new time.
Yeah. And what, in that sense of the word apocalypse, I can't think of many things more quote unquote apocalyptic than the arrival of God made flesh.
Whoa.
It's pretty intense.
Big. It's a big story.
Yeah.
I think the other big story is, I love the John the Baptist story, and we always talk about that. That one's rocked up again in one of the weeks. I think it's the Peace Week. We talked about John the Baptist and
Elizabeth.
Yeah. And you know, John the Baptist being the forerunner, the dude that was out, you know, the meerkat out first, sort of paving the way for Jesus. And yet the story about Elizabeth and Mary, the two cousins, the girls, Mary, Jesus' mummy, and Elizabeth, John the Baptist's mummy. So the boys were cousins and only born probably in the same 12-month, 10-month period of gestation, because Elizabeth was pregnant when Mary was pregnant, right? And you know that beautiful piece where Mary goes to visit her cousin and then little John does
a somersault
parkour
in the womb.
In the guts. Yeah, I just think, whoa. I sort of read that fresh too, you know, and thought, wow, the Holy Spirit alive and well in that moment, and these men, these giants of biblical narrative are born into the world and set this extravagant story of hope, love, peace and joy for the rest of time in motion. It's pretty bloody exciting actually, isn't it? Yeah, so I've been really excited about Advent this year. It's been beautiful. I've loved lighting the candles in church and enjoying decorating the church, and I go hardcore on the decorations in our church at Willara because I love that stuff. It's a bit like David Jones at church as well. It's my spiritual home, you know, and it's beautiful, and the kids love it. It's a really special time. I love it.
Can I tell you my thunderstorm story?
Please.
This is a slight tangent, but I've been I haven't told you about this, and earlier in the month I was at a music festival on a Saturday, and this giant storm came through, which you might remember.
Yep.
And it had been forecast to rain at different points during the day, and it hadn't. So we're like, oh, this is fantastic. We might have dodged the wet weather. And it's in Centennial Park, so it's all out.
Yes.
Not undercover. And the headlining act at the festival are 3 songs into their set, so they've kind of just started. And there's probably 30 or 40,000 people there, I want to say. Like, there's a lot of people. All of a sudden.
Pissing down.
No. The big screens next to the stage come up with warning. Incoming storm. This giant thunderstorm is touching down within the hour. We may need to ask you to evacuate. While the band's still playing.
Wow.
About 3 minutes later, in the middle of one of their songs, this was Fall Out Boy were headlining. Great band who, they're not my favourite, but they're giant.
They're screamers, aren't they?
No. They're just like a rock band.
Okay.
You would 100% recognise some of their songs. They've kind of crossed over into big pop anthem territory. You definitely
That's my vibe.
They've been in their songs have been in movies, and you'd 100% recognise them. I think halfway through their 4th song, so 10 maybe 15 minutes into their projected hour and 20-minute set, sound cuts out. Guy comes up on the stage and says, "Everyone please evacuate." 30,000 people all now funneling out through one single exit.
Why?
Because they didn't think to open up the emergency exits.
Oh my gosh.
It was chaos.
And was there lightning?
we could see the lightning getting closer, and you could see this giant horseshoe-shaped black cloud just approaching.
Hovering.
And when it arrived, the heavens opened. Like, it was mental.
So in the Advent scripture, they weren't ready.
But it's the closest I've come to in a big crowd setting. Like, all of a sudden, I'm being, you know, when you're walking but you can't take big strides, you're kind of half stepping. And you've got this sense that there's this giant storm approaching, and there's 30,000 people all trying to get out through the one exit, and you can't walk you can't take full steps. And all of a sudden,
It's a shuffle.
People are starting to get
Panicky,
and I'm kind of going, oh, this is how
people get crushed.
People get hurt.
Yeah.
And everything was okay. There were some, like, people had to jump fences, and there were people in wheelchairs had a really tough time getting out. So it wasn't great. But I sort of all of a sudden had this sense of, oh, this is like 1 or 2 clicks away from being
disaster,
like a really not great experience that could end in people getting hurt. And then me and some friends, we drove and parked at church on Saturday. So we arrived, unlocked the church, got in as the heavens opened.
Fantastic.
It was the heaviest rain I've ever seen. It was mental.
Yeah, that was on the news. I remember that. It was a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? And it flooded massive. Glad you're all okay.
Yeah. And in the end, it kind of, a bit disappointing in terms of how the event handled it in keeping everyone safe. Everyone was safe in the end. And the reason I bring this up is I was kind of reflecting this last week or so about part of the Advent story that we often don't reflect on is the roughly 1 to 4 year period after Jesus was born, where Mary and Joseph and Jesus are essentially refugees.
Right.
Because King Herod is
doing kill the baby routine.
Hunting down all the firstborn babies.
Yep.
And killing the babies to preserve his stature as king. And it's the closest, and I'm not comparing this at all to how asylum seekers or refugees feel on a daily basis, but it was the closest I've come to understanding that feeling of having to flee with an immediate sense of something
imminent
is coming
danger.
behind, something is arriving,
Yeah,
and you need to escape. Yeah. There's a really great picture book which I think is available to like free download, and there's resources attached to it, called Jesus Was a Refugee. Have you heard of this one?
No, I haven't.
I might see if I can find us a copy because it's fantastic, and it's a kid's picture book basically, but it tells the story of Mary and Joseph and Jesus, their lives essentially as refugees.
Yeah, they definitely were. So for 4 years after his birth, they couch surfed.
That's right.
In safety.
Before they settled.
I wonder who protected them.
Well, I mean, we definitely hear the story about the Magi.
Yeah, they come in sometime after his birth.
And they don't tell Herod where Jesus is.
Yeah, they keep it on the down low, don't they? Weren't they the coolest dudes?
And worth noting, there's never actually any mention of how many and what gender, just that there are 3 gifts.
Right.
So it could have been
a squadron.
A whole squad of men, women, children, we don't know.
Following that star.
Yeah.
From the Orient.
From Orient Far. That's the way
Orient
the song
Far.
goes. Yeah.
Sing it.
I can't remember it.
We three
that's
kings of Orient. Oh, travel so far.
Yeah, but like we sometimes have this sanitized, beautiful, commercialized idea of 100%. What the Christmas story looks like. It was dirty. It was
badass.
A time of fear and fleeing a violent ruler.
Right.
Yeah, I think that there are so many elements of the story that actually reflect some of how we can feel about our world today.
Oh, just her birth story, just Mary's birth story. And I think of how sanitised birth becomes for us these days, and how, incredible it is for certainly women in Western countries that have access to good medical health, right? I'm talking from a very privileged position. When I say this, I think of my own birthing story. It was, I don't know how Mary did it, quite frankly, just epic.
And she's probably about
she's a young
between
kid.
12 and 15.
Yeah, that's right. Her mum's not even with her. She's got no aunties with her. She's with Joseph. They've done a runner. They've got to get into his town to register for the census, and the timing couldn't have been worse for her, really, from a physiological perspective. But God had it all sorted, right? And having been in Jerusalem now and in that environment, I was in the base of Caiaphas's palace in Jerusalem, and the guide, Leontine, said to me, this is where they would have kept animals in the base. And then we talked about Bethlehem, and she said it would be similar to a place like this where Jesus was born. And while I haven't been to Bethlehem, I've seen photos of that, and it's quite cool. It's cool as in temperature cool because it's in the base, and it's like almost cave-like underneath. And they would have had straw and hay and probably animal skins on the ground for comfort. But she had no pethidine. She had no gas to suck on. It's just, I think, wow, girl, you were just a weapon of a human to nail that the way you did. The fear she must have felt, or maybe she didn't. Maybe she had the peace that passes all understanding wash over her, and the Spirit was on her the whole entire time during the push. Maybe, highly likely.
How much did her encounter with the angel affect her approach to the next however long? And interestingly enough,
good point, Jonty.
In different Gospels, in Matthew and Luke, in one, I can't remember which is which, the angel approaches Mary, and in the other, the angel approaches Joseph. So they both, according to different Gospels, have had this encounter with a divine creature telling them, this is going to be crazy, but chill.
Yeah.
God
imagine?
is at work in this situation.
Oh, it must have been such a relief, to have the Gabriel rock up and do the, wording in. Like, FYI, it's all going to be cool, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And again, we get the sense that an encounter with an angel like Gabriel is pretty scary.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah, well, aren't the shepherds out in the field and the angels turn up and host
choir of angels,
and they say, don't panic, everything's going to be okay.
And they fall to their faces on the ground,
they
shaking.
Themselves, Jonty,
exactly, yeah.
Because I'm thinking this is a scary apocalyptic vision, mate.
It gives me vibes of, if you think of like alien movies,
right?
When you have like some farmer or something out in a field, and all of a sudden like the lights appear in the sky, and it's like terrifying.
Yeah, and it's coming down. Those angels, the big celestial beings coming towards these shepherds out in the middle of a field in the dark. That's got to be absolutely traumatizing.
Yeah.
For them. Don't worry. Peace.
Yeah.
Peace to all men. It's like, what? I would have loved to have been there.
Yeah, would have been pretty cool.
Incredible.
I have a question, and I raise it because it was raised with me again recently, is this idea of Mary being a virgin.
Right.
Which to me, not through any particularly like any convictions that I have or deep theological certainties that I have, I think it's just because that's how it was passed on and how it has just settled in me, is that, of course, Mary was a virgin. I'm curious, to you, how important is it that Mary is a virgin? Does that particular detail play into how you understand the Christmas story? Because I know for some people it's a do not touch the theological truth,
right,
that Mary was a virgin.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I've got to say I believe Mary was a virgin because I believe the Holy Scripture.
Yep.
And that's really important for me. I feel that it's important because she clearly hasn't had sex with anybody. So no human's seed can have been put in her. And therefore this baby that's growing in her has been divinely implanted, not by another human's sperm. So I think that it was really important that that's what they said.
Yeah.
And scripturally they've said it that way.
And the detail is there in scripture.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
That they hadn't consummated their marriage.
I feel sorry for them. I feel sad for this young couple, right? They really love each other. They're betrothed to one another. They're just going through the process of this betrothal routine that they do, and they haven't yet laid together. And I think for young people, having sex the first time is a scary thing anyway. Well, I don't know that. I probably take that back. For me, it was a scary thing just because of the nature of who I am and my story. So it was scary. But I know other women are nervous to do that the first time. Boys probably as well, bit of pressure. And they don't even get to do that bit. And yet then they're having a kid.
And the cultural pressure on Joseph at that point, as well as Mary, like both of them.
Yeah. Can you
Which
imagine his mates?
Exactly.
His mates that maybe weren't, I don't know, just some of his mates that probably said, mate, you got to be kidding. She got knocked up by Peter over in the other village.
In the gospel that, I should look this up, I can't be bothered, but the gospel that includes the angel visiting Joseph, it starts with him having consider. I don't want to fuss,
right?
But I'm going to quietly divorce Mary.
Yeah, extricate myself from this shitstorm.
Yeah,
but so as to not create
exactly because of
embarrassment for her,
the cultural, but also the religious pressure that this marriage, on the surface, appears to no longer be viable.
Yeah,
because it hasn't been consummated. All of a sudden, Mary's pregnant.
Right.
Which I kind of look at that and go, Joseph, what a man of character that he's not just going to kick up a stink and be like, and kick Mary out, be like, how dare you, and make a big public show.
He's not a misogynist.
Of kicking, of ditching the marriage.
Right.
Which at the time, in the culture, he would have every right to do.
100%.
Which I think is largely why Gabriel shows up and says,
yeah, settle, mate.
Yeah. Let me explain.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Thank God for Gabriel because, he was getting ready to exit stage right, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And then Gabe rocks in, does his speech.
And I think it's interesting, Joseph kind of being, in comparison to a lot of the big characters that we read about in Scripture, is just kind of a bloke.
Oh, I love him.
He is, as was prophesied, from the line of David. So I love that the arrival of God incarnate, of God made flesh, is not attached to these big warrior characters that you see in the Old Testament.
Right.
It's just a young couple who are just kind of normal.
That's right.
I
know.
God works through the normal people. They're just people.
He even works through the dodgy.
That's right.
Look at me, mate. That's so good. It's just fantastic. They are so normal, but not. They're extraordinarily not normal because of the circumstances they find themselves in, that God is using them in this extraordinary, miraculous way.
Yeah.
And isn't it great they listened? That they listened to Gabriel, that they didn't lose their shit when they were told these extraordinary events were going to occur. Some people today could end up in a psych unit, I don't know if they had psych units back then. Probably not.
Probably not.
No. But it's enough to send you batshit with some of the happenings that went on with angels rocking up.
Yeah.
But God must have so had that in his sights, and it must have been such an amazing encounter Oh, so unreal. I love the story, Jonty. It makes me so happy. Yeah, it just shows the divine love of our Creator for us, his humans, you know.
It's such an insight into the character of God.
Oh, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, just the extravagant love that he has for us to do this.
Yeah, and that he doesn't require us to aspire to anything larger than who God has already made us to be.
Yeah.
God uses us as we are now, in the fullness of who we are, not needing us to live up to any expectation that we or anyone else might have of us. We are good enough for God to work through us.
Yeah.
We just have to be faithful. Yeah. Which I think is an amazing lesson to take out of this Advent season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and when we have these encounters with the Holy Spirit, it's made extra special, I think, because when I revisit these stories of Advent and the stories of Gabriel rocking up, they're just so epic that I don't want to take for granted the Holy Spirit encounters that I have because they feel epic for my life. And they're really nurturing and really reassuring and incredibly encouraging.
And tailored specifically for you.
So specific, right? Just so cool. God's just so creative and amazing. Oh, happy Christmas, Jonty.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. This might be a good time now to jump over to our interview with Meredith from Samaritan's Purse.
Yeah, stay online because it's an absolute ripper.
Yeah, so we'll see you on the other side of that for some final thoughts. But for now, here's Meredith. Okay, well, welcome to the show. We have Meredith Percy with us from Samaritan's Purse. How are you today?
Hi, good. I'm really well, thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. I mean, I know at this time of year of recording, it's super busy for you guys, so we really appreciate carving out the time.
No worries. Yeah, it is a busy time of year coming up to Christmas, but I'm sure everybody's busy, so happy to do it.
Thank you so much. So for people that might be a little bit unfamiliar with Samaritan's Purse, could you maybe just explain at a broad top level, what is Samaritan's Purse?
Yeah, sure. Samaritan's Purse is a not-for-profit, non-denominational Christian organisation with the focus of helping people in need, regardless of their background and regardless of country, culture, religion. We want to be able to support people where they're at, whether it's someone in need after a disaster, whether it's somebody who just hasn't heard about the gospel and who Jesus is and how much they love them, that we go out and we use that opportunity to be able to speak to them in that way. So that's our main focus.
Amazing. And I know for me and probably a lot of other people listening who might be somewhat familiar with Samaritan's Purse, it's through the Christmas Child program. Could you maybe speak a little bit about that? But then also I know that there are so many other things that Samaritan's Purse are involved in as well.
Yeah, sure. So Operation Christmas Child is the common one where most people know about. It's basically a gift-filled shoebox that gets packed by thousands of Australians. And at Christmas time, they get shipped off to various countries around the world. So from Australia, we have 5 countries this year that we'll be sending shoeboxes to, including Ukraine, Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Solomon Islands, and what's the last one? Fiji, Solomon Islands, and Cambodia. So prayerfully pray for those shoeboxes as they're currently getting processed and packed. And it's such a great ministry. Once those shoeboxes are given to a child, they're given the opportunity to hear about Jesus and given the opportunity to do a 12-week discipleship program. In that discipleship program, they get to hear the full story of the gospel and get to make a decision for Christ. And we have seen millions of children since its inception come to Christ through Operation Christmas Child. So the real focus is just spreading the love of Jesus through the simple gift of a shoebox to children. And it's amazing the transformation for families and communities and the building of new churches that have come all because of a shoebox. So incredible ministry that just goes from strength to strength. So that's Operation Christmas Child, but it's not the only ministry that we do. We also do projects projects like education, particularly in Cambodia, building schools in Cambodia, water projects, animals and agriculture projects, and the list goes on. Another area of Samaritan's Purse is disaster relief. So we do international disaster relief and Australian disaster relief. Australian disaster relief has been growing for us significantly over the last few years. We've seen a real growth because we keep having so many disasters, unfortunately, but we're learning and becoming more prepared to be able to respond to those disasters, and internationally as well. So yeah, it's a huge ministry, and I feel like I could just keep talking about it forever, but it's just a phenomenal way that we get to see through the church to be able to bless others who need to know about Jesus and who just need help in what's going on in their life at any given time. So yeah,
that's amazing. One of the things that caught my eye as well, just looking over some of the missions that you guys are taking part in, is with the Ukraine crisis response, because I feel like, and I don't know if you feel this is a similar experience for you, but there's just so many things going on in the world that the Ukraine situation seems like almost something that happened in the past, because there are so many other things that keep popping up. And so with, but looking at it and realizing, no, this is still a very important current situation that needs help and aid and all the different things. So maybe from Samaritan's Purse, how are you guys, what does that program look like for you with the crisis response in Ukraine?
Yeah, look, it's been huge. So Samaritan's Purse went into Ukraine basically as soon as the disaster happened. So February 2022, Samaritan's Purse set up an emergency field hospital, which is basically like a giant tent hospital. It's a really solid structure so that we can treat people as soon as they come in with injuries or sickness. We found a lot of people initially traveling away from home and had some serious injuries that needed to be dealt with. So the initial focus of Ukraine was, let's just heal the sick. Who needs help, and bringing them into the hospital. So we have Australians, New Zealanders, Americans, all over the world, amazing doctors and nurses who go to the Ukraine, and their whole focus is to heal those in those emergency field hospitals. So it really started there. But it has developed over the time. We now have a country office set up, and we are definitely still very actively engaged in the Ukraine because, like you said, it has just gone on. Unfortunately, you don't hear it so much in the media, but it doesn't mean that it's not happening, and people are still very much in need. So we now do food supplies, and we do medical supplies within Ukraine, but also we have refugee programs set up in Poland and other countries surrounding Ukraine to help the people who've now fled to re-establish their life and learn languages in countries that they never thought they'd find themselves in. So there's so many projects just that have come out of what's currently still happening in the Ukraine. So yeah, it's been a huge one.
And for people that might be interested in looking at just the breadth of the where you guys are working, where would be the best place to find that out?
I think just our website, samaritanspurse.org.au. It has pretty much everything that you can imagine. All these projects that I've mentioned in full detail. We try to give updates about how things are going and just general information about the crisis themselves. There's so many things you probably don't even realize. Right now, we're responding in Armenia because of a crisis that's been happening there, and we've got a burns unit set up. So there are things that don't even necessarily hit our Australian media that are actually very critical and happening in the world right now that is so important, and the work is just so critical for these people. So jumping on the website, I think, is the best place to get all that information. Yeah.
And for people that might want to get involved in some way, whether it's practically or in giving, or what's the best way or place to do that as well?
Oh my goodness, so many options. I don't even know where to start. So it can be as simple as pack a shoebox at home and send it in. You can give a donation online. You can pray for all these projects and the work and the people that are going out. If you're a little more adventurous, we have Australian disaster relief, so you can go out. We have a team that's now headed to Rochester in Victoria for the next month. and you can go down. If you can sweep a floor, if you can talk to somebody in need. So these people there, this is a year after the flood response that happened down in Echuca. People still aren't back in their homes. So we're going to help them try to get back into their homes through the work that we do. So if you're game, take a trip down there, get on some tough shoes and get your muscles out and do some work there. The last one is our DART team, which is Disaster Assistance Response Team. So if you're a nurse, a doctor, or you have amazing logistical experience, we need you to be able to help us, to be able to produce or to help those who are in need in these disasters like Ukraine and Armenia and Israel, the things that are happening at the moment. So that's really important.
Amazing. So if you're sitting at home, whether you're listening to this just before Christmas or in the Boxing Day slump,
That's it.
listening to this, and you feel like you want to get involved somehow, there are so many ways.
That's right. You got to get out there. No, don't sit in the pews. Like, you need to get out there. That's where the people are. There's just so many opportunities to talk to people, particularly that are hurting and have never heard about Jesus. I think this is amazing. So yeah.
And I think something that stuck out to me there isn't just like one way to do that, and we all have gifts and callings that are specific to us. So, and yeah, just in that situation that you outlined, there are so many ways that everyone can get involved specific to people's strengths.
That's right. I mean, and different life stages. I've got kids, so it's not easy. Oh yeah, I'll just jump in a car and go and help in Echuca. It's not that simple, but there are definitely ways for families, for everybody to get involved in some way. So absolutely. Yeah.
That's incredible. Well, thanks so much for your time.
No worries.
Merry Christmas. I know it isn't Christmas while we're recording.
Merry Christmas.
So there we have it. That was our interview with Meredith from Samaritan's Purse. Like she said, there are so many ways that you can get involved. So many ways. So whether you're listening to this just before Christmas or in that bridge between Christmas and New Year where you kind of have time to reflect and rest and eat leftovers in front of the cricket, and you're wondering if there are ways that you can get involved. There are. Just have a look at Samaritan's Purse. There are so many other, not just with Samaritan's Purse, it's just who we were speaking with today, but there are so many ways. One of the ways that Meredith flagged immediately was prayer. And I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about how we feel about prayer. What is prayer? Why do we do it? What do we think it achieves? That's a thorny question in terms of, are we praying to get something out of God? But so to start, how do you pray, Ness? And I'm sure there are so many different ways, but for you, what does your prayer life look like?
Yeah, good question. I pray on the fly. So I don't sort of take a Post-it note to-do list of what I'm going to do at the end of the day and now I'm going to kneel by my bed and pray like they do in the old-fashioned movies. I don't do that. I pray at the time when the need arises. So if I see an issue at hand, I will just stop and I'll pray. Or if I'm having a conversation, a pastoral conversation, even on the phone, I will stop the conversation and I'll just ask permission and go straight into prayer. I don't use other language other than language I'm using like now. I just probably don't say shit or bum or any rude words. I just have a really good conversation with God, and if it's a petition, if it's something I'm petitioning, somebody's health is in crisis. My uncle at the moment is really unwell with stomach cancer, and he's a pastor, and this is a man who has just been faithful to the Lord forever, has had an epic story of coming to God, and then has led so many people to the Lord. And he's just this walking, living example of who Jesus would want us to be in the form of him. And he's just beautiful, and he's sick. And so when I found that news, I just stopped in my tracks. And I was with my mum and my stepdad and Rob, and we just stopped. It's mum's brother, and we just launched into prayer as a group. We all held hands around the table. It was really organic. We held hands, and actually Mum started the prayer. She started, and then we just all, just naturally, one at a time, petitioned God. Some of us got images. God landed images on us, and then we prayed to the images of what that healing could look like. I listened for this. I listened when I'm praying. I listened for the Spirit to prompt me for what to say. It seems strange praying to God, and yet the Holy Spirit's prompting me for what to say. Often I'll pray in tongues.
Really? Interesting.
In that moment I didn't. I prayed just in English language, like speaking.
Yep.
But I will pray in tongues. If I need to do rapid fire prayer and I can't get the language out quick enough, I will launch into prayer in tongues, because it's like this. I describe it as like a golden conduit thread between my heart and soul and heaven. And I feel that there can be no electrical input from anywhere else when I pray in that way. See, I know that sounds like I'm a super Spiro weirdo, but that's just how it feels for me. And I pray, it's strong. It's a strong, connected, no one can intervene. It's just fast, furious and direct line to God. That's how it feels. And it feels like it's a super highway. I know that sounds...
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, that's the only way I can describe that.
Because I find that I've talked to a couple of other people who, whether it's prayer or otherwise, speak in tongues.
Yeah.
Because I've grown up in a Uniting Church setting, it's not that it doesn't happen, it's just that it's not like compared to a more Pentecostal setting or any number of different traditions where tongues is common. It's not something that I've really encountered.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't... It's not that I'm cynical or don't believe anything about, like, it's nothing to... It's just that it's not so foreign to me.
Right.
That I'm always really curious to hear about what that experience is like. And so hearing that from you makes a lot of sense, that it's... Because I was talking to my partner about this the other day, about the difference between written language and spoken language.
Right.
And I often... Part of the reason I sometimes struggle in social situations is I feel like my brain and the things that I want to say operate faster than I'm able to articulate them with my words.
Praying in tongues. There you go.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've got a story. Have you got time for a story?
100%, yeah.
I was driving down the M2 and it was at school pickup time. And I was heading home to Cherrybrook and to pick up my kids even from school at that time. It's 100 Ks on the M2 between Macquarie Centre and the Cherrybrook Pennant Hills turnoff. And yeah, we're coming down there, and just about that many cars away, like in my distance I can see it.
Yep.
I watch a car clip a car and I watch it turn over right in front of me.
Yeah.
It flips. I pull out to the right-hand lane. I can't stop.
Yep.
I have to keep going, and then when I can get back over again, which is just before the tunnel under Epping,
Yep.
I pull over.
Yep.
And I am hysterical. I have just seen a car
Flip
over, and I'm looking in my rear view mirror, and I can see it upside down on its bonnet, and I can see people stopping. There. I pull over and I go to ring 000.
Yep.
And Jonty, I was hysterical. And I'm ringing 000 and the lady says, fire, ambulance or police. I said, fucking everything. And she said, I said, I've just watched a car flip over and I'm on the M2 and I was hysterical, Jonty. And she said, she was so calm, and she said, madam, can you tell me which direction you're going? I couldn't, Jonty. I had no fucking idea what direction I was going at that point. I was in shock, absolute shock, and I couldn't hear an ambulance coming, and nobody was doing anything, and there was no help coming. And she was so good. She said to me, I told her my name, and she said, "Just breathe, Vanessa. I just want to say the ambulance, fire and police are on their way. You will hear the sirens soon." And then with that, I then was I don't know, my amygdala must have calmed down. Something must have happened because I remembered
help's on the way.
Help was on the way. So then I could give some information. Then I looked around and I could see where I was, and I said, I'm just before the tunnel. Which tunnel? I'm going, I don't know. It's the one that goes over under Epping. So she knew. Yeah. Which direction? I'm going, I'm heading home. Where do you live? Cherrybrook. So I had to give, she was so good at pulling the information. Anyway, I heard the ambulance coming, and I said I could hear the ambulance coming. And so then we hung up the phone. She said, please don't leave your car. Just stay in the car till you feel calm.
Yep.
I hung up the phone. I don't know how long that lasted for. I then screamed out to God in tongues. It was the biggest rapid fire, like it was like machine gun, rapid fire. I remember my eyes rolling up to the top of my head, sitting back in my chair and crying and screaming out in tongues at the top of my voice. I couldn't implore God more to save what I thought was a mother on her way to pick up her children from school. That's what was going on in my brain. I don't know if it because I was a mother on the way to picking up kids from school, but that's what I was alerted to praying.
Yeah.
So I just went hardcore, emptied my vessel of all prayer capability. That's the only way I can describe it, Jonty. And I just funneled it up to the heavens. And then I could, in my rearview mirror, I could see that people were there. There was, I waited for a period of time until I just felt like I could turn my engine on again and drive. Here's the funny bit. I got home. I picked up my kids. I got home. I had a huge cry. I spoke to Rob about it. I was really shaken by this because I didn't know what had happened to the person in the car, and I decided it was a mum picking up her kids. I hadn't seen a mum, but I don't know. I don't know if the Spirit prompted me or what was going on there, or was it because I was a mum? I don't know, Jonty. It was like a day later, I went to teach a spin class, and one of my friends is a paramedic. And I was telling this, she happened to be in the class, and I was telling a story about on the M2, and this thing happened, and my friend Kay said to me, "Oh, I heard you, Ness, on the radio." Oh. Yeah, I heard you on the radio. And I remember that story because she was in area command at that stage. And I said, "Oh, my God, Kay, what happened to her?" "Oh, what happened to the person?" She said, "Oh, she was a lady. It was a really miraculous story, Ness. She got dispatched to Westmead Hospital, and you know what? Jaws of Life, they cut her out of the car. She didn't have a scratch on her. She was fine. She was discharged some time later." I just couldn't believe it because what I saw in ahead of me and then in my rearview mirror was this violent car action of it turning upside down.
If they needed to use
they've had to pry her out
cut
of
her
there.
out of the car.
Yeah, that's right. But Kay said, "Yeah, no, she was fine. She was fine." I went,
"Yeah, wow.
Oh my Lord." And I just thanked God. So another way I pray is that it's not always petitioning. It's being grateful and thanking the Lord for answered prayers and for just gratitude in my day. Gratitude, and that's often my prayers at the end of a day, is about not so much a checklist, but a thank you for this interaction I had. Thank you for that conversation I had. Work your way, Lord, through the conversation I had over there. Or, that's how I do it, Jonty. I don't know any other way. I didn't go to prayer school. I am a Penty. That's my first experience is in the Pentecostal church. So maybe this is why my first understanding about prayer life was in a Penty fashion. So speaking in tongues, I had that all around me. It was normal for the first 7 years of my Christian life. So maybe that's I was in that sphere of influence for me. Yeah, I don't know any other way though. How do you pray?
Well, So I mean, it's changed for me over time. I want to say first, thanks for sharing that story. It was fantastic. But you know, for me, it's much. There's a song that I love called "I Don't Want to Pray" by Ed Sharp and the Magnetic Zeros. The whole point of the song being that like wanting your life itself to be a prayer, so you don't stop to pray. You're constantly in a state of communion with God. And I think for me, I do have those times where I stop and am quiet and retreat and pray. I pray once a week at least with a group of people in my Bible study group. But for me, I think similar to you, it's those quick incidental prayers that aren't pre-planned. They aren't like, okay, I'm going to sit down, I've got this checklist of things that I want to pray about. It's just over time, and I think this was directly linked with something I've talked about before, which is no longer holding the faith that was given to me by my parents, which is fit for a 4-year-old,
right?
In owning my own faith. All of a sudden now I have a relationship with a God and a Jesus that I actually recognise and actually have a relationship with, not this kind of archetypal teaching tool. So for me now, prayer is this constant state of, you know, and it comes and goes. I'll go through phases where I feel like I'm disconnected from God, and it's like, oh, it's because I haven't been actually stopping and communicating with God.
But you're in ministry, brother, so I've watched you stop and pray. And you've said to me when you've watched me in some really stressful times, should we pray about that, Ness?
Yeah.
So, can you please? Mate?
Yeah, and that's important too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think
do it on the fly.
But it comes in so many different forms.
Yeah.
And I want to say, because like I said, coming from a Uniting Church background, it traditionally doesn't have that big, extravagant, outward prayer as a common practice. Like, not that we don't pray in the Uniting Church, but prayer in the Uniting Church compared to, say, the Pentecostal Church is a very different thing. When I was in year 9, so I would have been 14 or 15, I was on a school camp down in the Basin for sports science or something, whatever subject I was taking at the time. And if you know the Basin, there's all this beautiful, knee-deep water.
Beautiful.
Really still. So we were out doing whatever after we'd done a hike, I think, and then we had the evening to camp and set up down
beautiful
there. Beautiful
part of the world.
Me and a bunch of other year 9 kids are out, like, throwing a ball around in the one of the wahoo balls that skips along the water and diving around and doing all sorts of stuff. And shout out Dave Chilton. A lot of people listening will probably recognise that name. Was the chaplain at the time at the high school that I was at. He was on the camp as well. He's an absolute legend. One of the first kind of spiritual mentors that I had as a teenager. He was there at the camp as well, and it got to a point where kind of everyone else had started to make their way back to the campsite for dinner or whatever, and it was myself and Chili, his name is Dave Chilton, Chili, kind of walking back, not intentionally, but ended up kind of just being there by ourselves, and we were just chatting, and you know, we had a really great ongoing relationship, just checking in. He was a really important mentor for me at the time. And we're chatting and we're walking back, and all of a sudden, like, oh, fuck, what was that? And I look down and there's blood in the water. And all of a sudden, this horrific pain in my foot. And I look down and I see a stingray.
Shit.
Not a particularly big one, but probably, I don't know, I want to say 30 centimetres across.
Oh, my, wow. So like a little manta ray.
Just a little,
manta ray.
Big puff of sand kind of emerges from under the sand and goes off. I look down and there's blood filling the water.
Whoa.
So what had happened is I'd stepped on top of a stingray in the sand, and it had lashed out and stung the inside of my heel. As you can imagine, unbelievably painful. To this day, it's probably the worst pain that I've experienced. For context, I'm in the ambulance going to hospital later on, and they all right, you should start to feel a little bit of relief now, having had the whistle or whatever. Any relief? I'm like, no. No, still in unbelievable pain. I had 3 goes of the whistle.
Oh my wow, Jonty.
And
because I think they inject something into you from their barb, don't they?
Yes.
Is that right?
So
it's not just a cut we're talking about. We're talking about an injected.
Yep. And I was lucky.
Poison?
They have these barbs that hook in. So that's when you mentioned Steve Irwin. The reason he died is because the barb lodged itself in, and so when he pulled it out, it caused great damage. If that had happened, it would have been stuck in my foot. It just kind of
Swiped
slashed
past
the side of my foot and swam off.
Oh, my Lord.
But it still had impact and injected the
goop,
the
mixture
stuff that makes it hurt. And so I'm lying there on the grass chewing on shirts so I don't chew my tongue off because it hurt that bad.
Oh, my mate.
The worst pain I've ever experienced, right? The point of this being, while I'm waiting for the ambulance, Chili, can I pray for you? And I was like, fuck, do whatever you want, I don't care. As soon as his hand touched my foot, no pain.
Whoa.
And he prayed, no pain, took his hand off, pain came back.
Wow.
So
did he go with you in the ambulance with his hand on your foot?
He didn't actually. Another teacher did, because I was like, if I was more with her, I'd be like, stay here, put your hand on my foot. Do not leave. So another teacher ended up going with me to that. But that is to say, that is the only experience I have with prayer.
Power.
Having some sort of real, tangible, immediate impact on the physical world. And I still have no idea how to understand that or reconcile that. And I have another friend, shout out Amelia if you're listening, who has a similar, she's a occupational therapist working with learning disabled kids and people with who really need help, and had the same thing, just one single experience where prayer all of a sudden had this immediate impact on someone's physical health.
Powerful.
And it's never happened again.
Wow.
And that has completely changed. And it, like I said, that was 10 years ago. And I still have never experienced anything quite like that. And so, but I think if prayer does have the potential to have that kind of power, even if it doesn't every time, then it's still incredibly worthwhile.
Oh, I think the power is the conversation and the relationship you're having with the Trinity in that moment. You know, you're evoking the Holy Spirit to come and do the miraculous, and that's exactly what Jesus said would happen. I'm leaving. That's the Easter story, right? Sorry, I know we're just doing babies born, but quick recap, Easter story. You know, I'm leaving, fellas. It's don't panic. I'm going to send something far more powerful than me, brothers.
Yeah, and
don't worry.
Pentecost, we read about
and Pentecost,
the Spirit descending.
So I believe what's happened is the Spirit has, when Chili has touched your foot, that the Spirit has come in and absolutely extravagantly shown you the power of that prayer. And it might be for a time, not only then for you to have that experience as a 15-year-old kid, but now, Jonty, we're now telling our listeners about that story. You're telling and sharing, that's testimonial. And I think that's power, and that's the Bible's, the New Testament's littered with testimonials of the power of the Holy Spirit after Pentecost and Jesus Christ before Pentecost. It's the miraculous, and the lady surviving the car accident.
Yeah.
I just believe that God was all over that, It could have been on the news that night on Channel 7, Thingo Ferguson, and a lady died on the M2, or she's paralysed, or, her baby died in the back of the car. It could have been horrific.
Yeah.
None of that was the thing. The Spirit is powerful. And I think God probably wanted me to pray in that time. And I think there's no accident that I was there on the M2 at that time. Prayer is powerful. It's bloody great. Oh, I love Jesus.
So I think maybe those two stories can serve as an illustration of what Meredith is talking about. I think we underestimate just how powerful prayer can be.
Yeah.
Not that it always is. I think we can cynically fall into the trap of, well, every prayer has to be life-changing.
Sure.
I think it's like brushing your teeth. That's how I feel about it now. It's not that every time you brush your teeth, you're changing the world. It's that every time you brush your teeth, you're committing to the ritual that is necessary for maintenance. And in the case of brushing your teeth, you don't brush your teeth every day and every night because each stroke radically changes how your teeth look. It's because every time you do it, it's part of the ongoing process that you have to commit to maintain good health. And I think that's where I am with prayer at the moment.
So spiritual health.
Yeah, it's not about every prayer is completely life-changing. It's that your life changes when you pray every day.
Yeah, I think it definitely does. I think of prayer as a way that I can communicate with God extravagantly and commune with God in a way all the time. So I can be in relationship with God. That's how I be in relationship with God, is through my prayer life.
Yeah.
And by just like, I love you, Jonty, you're my friend and colleague, and we talk. And I just see prayer as an extension of my relationship with God. Yeah. It's powerful stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. And I love being in prayer at the moment because it is a time, it's about me carving out time to listen to God.
Nice.
Not just sitting down with the list, right? And I think, I've learnt more about God's character and felt more at peace with God's presence in my life at a time in my life that's full of, my early mid-20s. I said early 20s. I'm not in my early 20s anymore. Just about what the future holds and big life decisions and all that sort of thing. And I just would encourage people to sit, and whether you frame it as meditation or mindfulness or prayer or a combination or something else, sitting and being still and being quiet and allowing space for God to speak to you is something that isn't going to happen unless you make time for it.
Yeah.
And even still today, I still don't do it nearly as much as I want and feel like I need. Even then, on the occasions that I do carve time out for it, it's
life-changing.
It's just like brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we live in a world that's at such a speed and such a tempo that finding time to do that is really important.
Amen, brother.
And what better time to try if you haven't, if you're
give it a crack at Christmas.
Feeling like you're in the lead up to the new year or in the lead up to Christmas, spend a bit of time over Boxing Day or in the bridge between heartburn and indigestion between Christmas and New Year's.
Talking of which, let's go and have some fruitcake.
Yeah, I
reckon. Have a beer and some fruitcake. What do you reckon?
That sounds good.
Yeah, I think so.
So thanks for listening. I hope that, again, actually, I should mention as well, next week we have our last episode of the year, which is crazy to think about, after which we will be continuing through January, and we'll talk about this again next week. We are switching our release day from Friday to Tuesday.
So cool. So you can get it for the week.
That's right. So we have one more Friday, which will be next Friday before the end of the year. Then we're going to take that first week off, just so we're not releasing 2 episodes in 4 days or whatever.
Yep.
And we'll be back on that second Tuesday of the year. So
exciting.
But we'll remind you of that next week as well.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas. And Merry Christmas to all our listeners. Thanks for being with us this year. We will see you next week, obviously. But however it is you're celebrating Christmas, whether it's a time of joy or a time of sadness or a time of uncertainty or a time of your favourite time of the year, whatever Christmas is for you, we wish you a very, very Merry Christmas.
Safe and happy holiday.
Yeah, and we appreciate you spending it with us. If you want to get in touch, filthyhopepod@gmail.com or find us on socials. filthyhope_pod on Instagram is probably the best way to reach us. That just about does us. We will see you next week as we round out the year. It's gone so fast. I can't
smell
believe
the
it.
fruitcake, mate. Wrap the show. Come on, let's do it. The custard's in the microwave.
Yeah. See you next week, people.
Bye.
This is a prayer for the people